Weckenham, they'll pay for this, Brian L. Roberts vowed, his voice a low growl, as he shielded his wife, Dr. Ursula Burns, from the storm's relentless assault, her emerald dress clinging to her trembling frame, stained with wine and rain. 5 white socialites, led by the city's most powerful woman, had lured Ursula, a black neurosurgeon, into their glittering gala only to humiliate her, mocking her Nigerian roots, her profession, her very existence, before casting her into the rain-soaked night. The invitation was a cruel trap, designed to break her. Soaked and shamed on the skyscraper's steps, Ursula called Brian, a real estate billionaire, who roared up in his Tesla, fury blazing. What happens when these women face the truth of Ursula's power? Will their arrogance crumble, or will their cruelty go unpunished? Share where and when you're listening, hit subscribe, and join us to uncover this tale of justice. The Manhattan dusk pulsed with restless energy, a symphony of honking taxis and flickering neon that bathed the city in a restless glow. Dr. Ursula Burns stepped from the glass doors of New York Presbyterian Hospital, her white coat swapped for an emerald dress that clung to her frame like a second skin, its deep hue a quiet rebellion against the sterile fluorescence she'd left behind. Her braids, swept into an intricate knot, caught the light of a passing billboard, and in her hand, a gold-embossed invitation burned with unspoken questions. The card, slipped into her office mailbox a week ago, bore her name in elegant script, Dr. Ursula Burns, cordially invited to the Ivory Circle Gala. The Ivory Circle, New York's whispered legend of elite women, their names synonymous with power and privilege, was a world apart from her own. Why her? Why now? Ursula's heels clicked against the pavement as she navigated the crowded sidewalk, the city's pulse a counterpoint to her racing thoughts. As a black woman, daughter of Nigerian immigrants who ran a modest bakery in Harlem, she'd carved her path through sheer will, her scalpel saving lives where others saw only limits. Her mother's medical patents had left her a fortune she kept hidden, choosing purpose over flash. The Ivory Circle, with its glittering galas and whispered influence, was a puzzle. Was it her rising star in neurosurgery, lauded in medical journals, or a cruel jest, a clerical error by some distracted assistant? The invitation's weight pressed against her palm, its gold lettering glinting like a challenge under the streetlights. She slipped into her Upper West Side apartment, the minimalist space a stark contrast to the city's chaos. The glass dining table gleamed under soft lighting as she set the invitation down, its elegance jarring against her simple decor. Her husband, Brian L. Roberts, was in Dubai, his real estate empire demanding late nights and transatlantic flights. Their 5-year marriage was a quiet fortress, built on mutual respect. His world of skyscrapers and boardrooms, hers of operating theaters and lives reclaimed. Ursula pulled out her phone, her fingers hesitating before texting Brian about the gala. His reply came swiftly, warm and teasing despite the distance. "Go dazzle them, Ursula. They're not ready for you." She smiled, his confidence a steadying force, but doubt gnawed at her. Did she belong in a world of socialites, where wealth was worn like armor? The question lingered as she stood before her mirror, smoothing the folds of her dress. The emerald fabric hugged her curves, its understated elegance a reflection of her strength. No need for ostentation. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, a memory from childhood in Harlem. "You carry fire in your blood, Ursula. Never let them dim it." Her parents' bakery, a humble cornerstone of their community, had taught her resilience. Her mother's patents, a legacy of brilliance, had funded her education. Yet the Ivory Circle was a different beast, a constellation of power where names like Evelyn Prescott, the city's reigning queen of high society, held sway. Ursula had read of Evelyn's sharp smile, her silver hair a crown over a real estate dynasty that rivaled Brian's. The other women, media moguls, fashion titans, art collectors, were shadows in the city's elite, their influence as palpable as the humid air outside. Ursula's fingers traced the invitation's edge, her pulse quickening. She wasn't naive. As a black woman navigating spaces not built for her, she'd faced enough sidelong glances to know invitations like this came with strings. The gala felt like a door cracked open, A glimpse into a world she'd only glimpsed in headlines. But why her? Her work at the hospital, hours spent mending broken minds, her latest surgery saving a child from a tumor, had earned her accolades, but not this kind of attention. Was it a genuine nod to her skill, or something darker, a trap woven into the calligraphy? The city's skyline loomed beyond her window, its lights a mosaic of promise and peril, urging her forward. She slipped on pearl earrings, modest but deliberate, a nod to her mother's elegance. Brian's text buzzed again. "You're more than their match. Show them." His words steadied her, but the mirror reflected a flicker of unease. She wasn't one for designer labels or name-dropping. Her wealth a silent force she wielded for good. Scholarships for Harlem kids, quiet donations to clinics. The Ivory Circle, with its whispered rules and gilded gates, was alien territory. Yet curiosity burned brighter than doubt. She grabbed her clutch, its leather cool against her palm, and stepped into the night, the city's hum a call to battle. The skyscraper hosting the gala stood like a monolith, its glass facade reflecting Manhattan's restless glow. Ursula crossed the marble lobby, where a doorman in crisp uniform nodded her through, his eyes lingering a fraction too long. The private elevator awaited, its polished doors a portal to the unknown. As she stepped inside, the city's pulse faded, replaced by the soft hum of ascent. Her heart thudded, not with fear, but with the weight of stepping into a lion's den. The Ivory Circle was no mere gathering. It was a stage, and Ursula sensed she was about to play a role she hadn't chosen. The elevator climbed, each ding a heartbeat, carrying her toward a reckoning she couldn't yet name. Her mother's words echoed again. "Never let them dim your fire." She straightened her shoulders, the emerald dress a quiet armor, ready to face whatever lay beyond the doors. The elevator's soft ding pierced the silence, and Ursula Burns stepped into the 50th floor ballroom, her emerald dress catching the chandelier's fractured light like a beacon in the opulent haze. The air was thick with jasmine perfume and the clink of crystal glasses, a glittering cage of wealth that seemed to hum with judgment. Her braids, still neatly pinned, felt like armor as 5 women turned as one, their eyes locking onto her with the precision of hawks. Evelyn Prescott, the Ivory Circle's queen, stood at the center, her silver hair swept into a chignon that gleamed like a crown, her diamond necklace a cold constellation against her pale skin. "Dr. Burns, I presume," she said, her voice smooth as silk, but edged with frost, her handshake a fleeting brush of disdain. The others closed in, a semicircle of couture gowns and calculated smiles. Lillian Drake, a media heiress with sharp cheekbones and sharper eyes, adjusted a sapphire bracelet with deliberate flair. Charlotte Hale, a hedge fund heiress, carried an air of inherited superiority, her blonde curls cascading over a crimson dress. Vanessa Quinn, a luxury brand CEO, tilted her head, her gaze dissecting Ursula's every move. Beatrice Lang, an art collector with a smile too sweet to trust, lingered slightly apart, her emerald earrings glinting like a warning. In the corner, a lone journalist, Mia Torres, hovered with a camera, her presence a quiet shadow in the room's extravagance. Ursula's pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the weight of their scrutiny. She wasn't here to be welcomed. She was on trial. "Welcome to the Ivory Circle," Evelyn said, guiding Ursula to a velvet chair, her tone suggesting anything but warmth. The words hung heavy, laced with implication, and Ursula's instincts prickled. She sat, the leather cool against her skin, and met their gazes steadily. "I'm Dr. Ursula Burns," she began, her voice clear and measured. "A neurosurgeon at New York Presbyterian, dedicated to saving lives." The silence that followed was a blade, slicing through the room's perfumed air. Lillian's lips twitched, suppressing a laugh. "A doctor," she said, the word dripping with condescension, as if Ursula had confessed to a quaint hobby. Charlotte raised an eyebrow, her fingers tapping her glass. "From what family, exactly?" she asked, her tone a gauntlet thrown down. Ursula's fingers tightened on her clutch, but her expression remained calm. "My parents are Nigerian immigrants who run a bakery in Harlem," she said, her voice steady as stone. "My work is my legacy." The room seemed to shrink, the women's smiles sharpening into something predatory. Beatrice leaned forward, her voice syrupy. A bakery? How charming. Vanessa's laugh was a sharp crack, her eyes narrowing. Did you learn that faint accent in Harlem? Or is it something you picked up for effect? The jab at her Nigerian roots stung, a deliberate twist of the knife. But Ursula's gaze didn't waver. She'd faced worse. Whispers in medical school, sidelong glances at conferences. But this was different. A performance of cruelty orchestrated for their amusement. Evelyn leaned closer, her diamond necklace catching the light like a weapon. Tell us, Ursula, she said, her voice low, almost intimate. What brings a surgeon to our circle? Surely you're connected to someone notable. The question landed like a trap, its edges gleaming with intent. Ursula's heart steadied, her years of navigating spaces not built for her, anchoring her resolve. I was invited, she replied, her tone firm but calm. I'm curious what you value in new members. The silence thickened, broken by Lillian's derisive snort. Value, she echoed, adjusting her bracelet with a flick. This is about lineage, darling. What's your pedigree? The room's laughter was a chorus, each note a dagger aimed at Ursula's dignity. The realization hit like a quiet thunderclap. This was no gala, but a stage for their entertainment. The invitation, with its gold embossing, was a lure, a cruel jest to dissect someone they deemed lesser. Ursula's cheeks warmed, not with shame, but with a growing ember of defiance. She thought of her mother, Dr. Ngozi Burns, whose brilliance in a lab had changed medicine, and her parents, whose Harlem bakery stood as a testament to grit. These women knew nothing of her, yet they sat in judgment, their wealth a shield for their malice. I bring myself, Ursula said simply, her voice cutting through their laughter. My work, my values, my perspective. The words meant to assert her worth only fueled their amusement. Charlotte clapped her hands, her laugh sharp and mocking. How noble, she said. What do you save lives for, a pat on the back? Vanessa chimed in, her tone viciously playful. Have you ever even been to a charity gala, or are those above your pay grade? The insults came faster, a barrage designed to wound. Lillian mocked Ursula's dress, calling it department store chic, while Beatrice questioned her presence, her smile too sweet. No offense, Ursula, but this circle is exclusive. We associate with women of a certain caliber. The word hung in the air, heavy with implication, and Ursula's pulse quickened. She was no stranger to prejudice, but this was a deliberate dismantling, each word a calculated strike. Evelyn stood, her presence commanding the room. Lady, she said, addressing the group as if Ursula were invisible, I think we've heard enough. It's clear she doesn't belong. Her smile was cold as glass, her eyes glinting with triumph. You must understand, dear, she said, turning to Ursula. We're very selective. This was an amusing diversion, but it's time to correct the mistake. The word mistake cut deeper than the rest, a confirmation of Ursula's suspicions. The invitation was a trap, and she was their prey. She stood, her movements deliberate, her chin high despite the tremor in her chest. You invited me here, she said, her voice firm. You don't get to decide my worth. Evelyn's smile didn't waver, but her eyes hardened. Oh, but we do, she replied softly. Beatrice, call security. We can't have just anyone wandering into our world. The ballroom's air grew stifling, heavy with the weight of the ivory circle's disdain. Ursula Burns sat in the velvet chair, her emerald dress a stark contrast to the glittering couture of the 5 women encircling her, their eyes gleaming with predatory glee. Evelyn Prescott leaned forward, her silver hair catching the chandelier's prisms like a crown of ice, her smile a blade wrapped in silk. So, Ursula, she purred, her voice laced with venom. What brings a surgeon to our world? Surely you're tied to someone of note. The question was a trap, its edges sharp with intent, and Ursula's heart steadied, her years of facing subtle slights as a black woman anchoring her resolve. She met Evelyn's gaze, unflinching. I'm here because you invited me, she said, her voice clear and measured. My work saving lives is my credential. The silence that followed was a guillotine, slicing through the room's perfumed haze. Lillian Drake's lips curled into a sneer, her sapphire bracelet glinting as she leaned back. Saving lives? She mocked, the words dripping with disdain. What, stitching up Harlem's broken dreams? Charlotte Hale's laugh was sharp, her crimson dress a slash of color as she tapped her glass. Which social clubs do your parents belong to? She asked, her tone suggesting she knew the answer. Perhaps we've crossed paths at a gala. Ursula's fingers tightened on her clutch, but her expression remained calm. They run a bakery in Harlem, she replied. Their focus is family, not clubs. The room chilled, the women exchanging glances, their smiles hardening into something cruel. Vanessa Quinn tilted her head, her voice a mockery of curiosity. A bakery? How quaint. Do you ever tire of playing savior, or is that just your immigrant charm? The jab at her Nigerian roots landed like a fist, and Ursula's cheeks warmed, not with shame, but with a growing ember of defiance. She'd faced prejudice before, whispers in medical school, colleagues questioning her place. But this was a performance, a deliberate dismantling of her dignity. Beatrice Lang's smile was too sweet, her emerald earrings catching the light as she leaned forward. No offense, dear, she said, her tone patronizing, but this circle is for women who shape the world, not patch it up. The realization crashed over Ursula like a wave. The invitation was a lure, a cruel jest to parade her as a specimen for their amusement. Mia Torres, the journalist, lingered in the shadows, her camera a silent witness to the unfolding cruelty. Evelyn seized the moment, raising her wine glass with deliberate grace. A toast, she declared, her eyes locked on Ursula. To elegance. Before Ursula could react, Evelyn tipped the glass, crimson liquid splashing across Ursula's emerald dress, staining it like blood. A lesson in refinement, Evelyn said, her smile ablade. The room erupted in laughter, the sound echoing off the marble walls, each peal a dagger aimed at Ursula's core. Lillian raised her phone, recording the humiliation, her voice a gleeful hiss. This'll go viral by morning. Harlem's hero, doused in wine. The other guests, kept at a distance by the circle's influence, watched in silence, their eyes a wall of complicity. Ursula's pulse raced, but she refused to break. You think this defines me? She said, her voice steady despite the sting. You're wrong. Evelyn's laugh was sharp, cutting through the air. Oh, darling, we define you, she said. You're a mistake in our world. Charlotte clapped, her voice mocking. What do you donate? Your surgeon's salary? $1 a day? The laughter swelled, a chorus of privilege that drowned out Ursula's quiet strength. She thought of her parents, who'd built a life from nothing in Harlem, their bakery a testament to resilience. She thought of her mother, Dr. Ngozi Burns, whose patents had changed medicine. These women knew none of this, yet they judged her, her heritage, her work, her very existence. Ursula stood, her movements deliberate, her chin high. I was invited here, she said, her voice a quiet storm. You don't get to dismiss me. Evelyn's smile was ice. Oh, but we can, she replied, her tone final. Beatrice, call security. We can't have uninvited guests disrupting our evening. Beatrice dialed, her grin vicious, and a guard, Jamal, appeared, his face etched with apology. Ma'am, he said softly, I need to escort you out. Ursula's heart pounded, but she refused to let them see her falter. She memorized their faces. Evelyn's cold triumph, Lillian's smirk, Charlotte's raised eyebrow, Vanessa's glee, Beatrice's false sweetness. This is a mistake, she said, her voice low but firm. You don't know who I am. Lillian's laugh was a shard of glass. Oh, we know exactly who you are, she said. A nobody from Harlem trying to play in our world. The words struck like a blow, and Ursula's cheeks burned, not with shame, but with a fire kindling within. Jamal gestured toward the elevator, his discomfort palpable, and she moved, her steps measured, her dignity intact despite their efforts to strip it away. The elevator doors closed, the women's laughter a cruel serenade echoing in her ears. The guard's silence was heavy, his eyes averted as they descended. Ursula's dress clung to her, the wine stain a crimson wound against the emerald, a badge of their cruelty. The storm waited beyond the glass doors, its roar a faint hum, a prelude to the humiliation yet to come. She thought of her mother's words, "You carry fire in your blood." That fire burned now, a quiet resolve to face the tempest ahead, her spirit unbroken, ready to reclaim what they'd tried to steal. The elevator's hum faded, leaving Ursula Burns in a void of silence as the doors slid open to the skyscraper's marble lobby. Her emerald dress, soaked with the wine Evelyn Prescott had poured in mocking triumph, clung to her skin, the crimson stain bleeding into the fabric like an open wound. Jamal, the guard, stood beside her, his broad shoulders hunched, his eyes averted with a guilt that mirrored her own churning emotions. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the storm's distant roar beyond the glass doors. Ursula met his gaze, her expression steady despite the ache in her chest. "You're not the one who owes me an apology," she said, her voice soft but resolute. He nodded, a flicker of respect in his eyes, and gestured toward the exit, where the night's fury waited. She pushed through the glass doors, and the storm hit like 1,000 icy needles, drenching her in seconds. The rain mingled with the wine stain, turning her dress into a sodden banner of her humiliation. Her braids, once meticulously pinned, hung heavy against her face, dripping onto the cold stone steps where she sank, the chill biting through her skin. Above, the ballroom windows glowed, mocking her with the silhouettes of the ivory circle. Evelyn's silver hair a beacon of victory, Lillian Drake's phone raised to capture her drenched defeat. Charlotte Hale's glass lifted in a toast. Their laughter, though inaudible through the storm's howl, echoed in Ursula's mind, each smirk a fresh cut to her dignity. The city blurred around her, its lights softened by the rain's relentless curtain. But a memory pierced the haze. Harlem, a cramped classroom, her 12-year-old self standing before a teacher who sneered, "Your accent's a chain, Ursula. It'll keep you small." The sting of those words, the weight of being told she'd never rise above her Nigerian roots, had forged her into the woman she was now. She thought of her parents, their bakery a testament to grit, kneading dough through sleepless nights to fund her dreams. She thought of her mother, Dr. Ngozi Burns, whose medical patents had built a fortune Ursula wielded quietly, for clinics and scholarships, not for show. These women, with their gilded cruelty, knew nothing of her fire. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone, the screen slick with rain. She dialed Brian L. Roberts, her husband, her anchor. The call connected, his voice cutting through the storm's roar like a lifeline. "Ursula, what's wrong?" he asked, urgency lacing his words. "They threw me out, Brian," she said, her voice breaking, the weight of the evening spilling over. "They mocked me. My work, my heritage, my skin. They poured wine on me, filmed it." A sob caught in her throat, but she swallowed it, refusing to let it free. "I'm downtown, in the rain." Brian's voice turned fierce, a growl that matched the thunder. "I'm landing now. Send me your location." Her fingers slipped on the wet screen as she tapped out the address, tucking the phone into her clutch, hugging it close as if it could shield her from the cold. The storm's winds shrieked, echoing the ivory circle's laughter, but Ursula's spirit refused to break. She glanced up, the ballroom's glow a distant taunt. Evelyn stood at the window, her silhouette regal, gesturing as if recounting Ursula's expulsion with glee. Lillian's phone was a dark speck, still recording, while Charlotte, Vanessa, and Beatrice raised their glasses, their celebration a knife in Ursula's chest. The injustice burned, mingling with the chill seeping into her bones. She wasn't just a neurosurgeon, not just a daughter of immigrants. She was Ursula Burns, a woman whose strength these women couldn't fathom. A childhood memory flared again, her mother braiding her hair in their Harlem kitchen, whispering, "You carry fire in your blood, Ursula. No one can take that." That fire kindled now, a quiet blaze that warmed her against the storm's assault. The rain might have soaked her, the wine might have stained her, but they couldn't drown her resolve. She sat, shivering but unyielding, her eyes fixed on the blurred city, her mind sharpening with purpose. She wasn't their prey, she was their reckoning. The storm's roar softened, pierced by the low hum of a sleek black Tesla cutting through the rain, its headlights slicing the darkness like a blade. Brian leapt from the car, his tailored suit darkening under the downpour, his face a tempest of fury and love. "Ursula!" he called, rushing to her side, stripping off his coat to wrap around her trembling shoulders. He held an umbrella aloft, his touch gentle but his eyes blazing. "Who did this to you?" he demanded, his voice a growl that rivaled the thunder. Ursula's voice wavered as she recounted the ordeal. The mockery of her Nigerian roots, her work, the wine splashed on her dress, Lillian's video. "They wanted to break me," she whispered, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Brian's jaw clenched, his hand tightening on hers. "They'll wish they never met you," he vowed, his voice a promise of retribution. He helped her to her feet, his arm a shield against the storm. "I'm coming with you," Ursula said, her voice finding steel despite the chill. "I need to face them." Brian's eyes softened, pride flickering through his anger. "Together, then," he said, leading her toward the lobby, the Tesla's lights a fading beacon in the rain. The city's pulse thrummed around them, a call to battle, and Ursula felt her fire flare brighter, ready to burn through the ivory circle's arrogance. The skyscraper's glass doors parted, admitting Ursula Burns and Brian L. Roberts into the marble lobby, a sanctuary of cold elegance that seemed to hold its breath. Ursula's emerald dress, sodden with rain and stained with the wine Evelyn Prescott had poured in mockery, dripped onto the polished floor, each drop a testament to her unyielding resolve. Brian's arm, steady around her, was a shield against the storm's lingering chill. His tailored suit darkened by the downpour, but his presence a tower of controlled fury. His eyes, blazing with a promise of retribution, silenced the doorman's hesitant glance. Jamal, the guard who had escorted Ursula out, stood frozen, his face a mask of guilt as Brian flashed a keycard, its metallic glint a quiet assertion of power. "We're going back up," Brian said, his voice low, a blade honed by anger. The elevator's ascent was a study in silence, the hum of its machinery a counterpoint to Ursula's racing pulse. Her braids, heavy with rain, framed her face like a warrior's crown, the wine stain on her dress a badge of defiance. Brian's hand rested on her back, his touch grounding her as she steeled herself for the confrontation ahead. The memory of her mother's words, "You carry fire in your blood," burned within her, a flame no storm could douse. The ivory circle had thought her a nobody, a black woman from Harlem to be broken for their amusement. They were about to learn their mistake. The elevator doors slid open, and the ballroom's laughter died as if severed by a guillotine. The chandelier's prisms cast fractured light across the faces of the five women, their champagne flutes forgotten in their hands. Evelyn Prescott stood at the center, her silver hair a fading crown, her diamond necklace glinting uselessly. Lillian Drake froze mid-gesture, her phone slipping to the floor with a clatter, the video of Ursula's humiliation now a liability. Charlotte Hale's glass trembled, her crimson dress a stark contrast to her paling face. Vanessa Quinn's poise crumbled, her eyes darting to the exit. Beatrice Lang's false smile vanished, her emerald earrings dull in the moment's wait. Mia Torres, the journalist, stood in the shadows, her camera trained on the unfolding drama, a silent witness to the shift in power. "Good evening, ladies," Brian said, his voice ice, each word a lash. "You've met my wife, Dr. Ursula Burns." The silence was deafening, a vacuum where their arrogance had thrived. Evelyn's glass wavered, a faint clink betraying her composure. "Mr. Roberts," she stammered, her usual authority fraying, "we had no idea." Brian's eyes narrowed, his tone unyielding. "You didn't need to know who she's married to treat her with decency. You chose cruelty instead." His words were a mirror, forcing the women to face their prejudice, their laughter now a haunting echo in their minds. Ursula felt the warmth of his arm, a steady anchor, but this was her battle as much as his. She stepped forward, her wet dress clinging to her frame, the wine stain a vivid scar under the chandelier's glow. "There's more," she said, her voice a quiet storm, resonant with authority. From her clutch, she pulled a damp folder, slamming it onto the glass table with a thud that reverberated like thunder. She tossed a gleaming key beside it, its metallic clink a declaration of war. "These are the deeds to this building," she announced, her gaze locking onto Evelyn's. "I own it. Purchased last month through my trust. A gasp tore through the room, the women's faces a gallery of shock. Lillian stumbled back, her phone forgotten. Charlotte choked, her hand flying to her throat. Vanessa's face drained of color, her boutique's fate flashing before her eyes. Ursula's voice rose, a tempest of truth. My mother's medical patents built my fortune. I'm the granddaughter of Dr. Ngozi Burns, whose innovations saved millions. This building was her dream, and I reclaimed it. You mocked a black woman from Harlem, thinking I was nothing. You were wrong. Evelyn's wine glass slipped, shattering on the marble, the red liquid pooling like blood, a symbol of her fall. Lillian stammered, That video? It was a mistake. Charlotte pleaded. I'll fund your hospital, anything. Vanessa whispered, My boutique. It's all I have. Beatrice, her voice breaking, admitted, I knew your mother's name. I should have spoken up, but I wanted their approval. The confession hung heavy, a crack in their united front. Evelyn tried to salvage her dignity, her voice quivering. Dr. Burns, our circle has a culture you wouldn't understand. Ursula cut her off, her eyes blazing. Your culture is arrogance built on fear. I don't need to fit into it, I own it. The words were a whip, and Evelyn flinched, her silver chignon unraveling. Brian's hand tightened on Ursula's, his voice a low growl. I've acquired your lease contracts. One word from Ursula, and you're out of this building. Mia's camera clicked softly, capturing the moment's seismic shift. The room, once a stage for their triumph, was now a courtroom, and Ursula stood as its judge. Ursula's gaze swept the room, meeting each pair of eyes, some pleading, some averted, all stripped of their earlier malice. The Ivory Circle is finished, she declared, her voice unyielding. This ballroom will host the Horizon Alliance, built on respect, not elitism. You'll start by apologizing to Jamal, the guard you forced to escort me out, publicly at the next city gala, or your names will be synonymous with shame. The promise in her words hung heavy, a prelude to consequences yet to unfold, her fire blazing brighter than the chandelier above. The ballroom, once a glittering shrine to the Ivory Circle's arrogance, was now a fractured tableau, its chandelier light casting jagged shadows across the faces of 5 women, stripped bare of their smug triumph. Ursula Burns stood at the center, her emerald dress, still damp from the storm, its wine stain a defiant scar, shimmering like armor under the prism's glow. Beside her, Brian L. Roberts' presence was a pillar of quiet fury, his hands steady on her back, his tailored suit a silent testament to the power they wielded together. The glass table bore the weight of Ursula's declaration, the deeds to the skyscraper, the key's metallic glint a verdict, and the shattered remnants of Evelyn Prescott's wine glass, its red pool a bloodied symbol of her fall. The air crackled with the weight of their reckoning, a silence so heavy it seemed to choke the room's perfumed haze. Evelyn's silver hair hung loose, her chignon unraveled, her diamond necklace a hollow ornament against her paling skin. Her voice quavered as she stepped forward, hands clasped as if in supplication. Dr. Burns, she said, her once icy tone now a fragile thread, we made a terrible mistake. If we'd known... Brian cut her off, his voice ablade. If you'd known she was my wife, or owned this building, you'd have groveled instead of humiliating her. That's your failure, not hers. His words lashed through the room, and Evelyn flinched, her eyes darting to her allies for support that never came. Lillian Drake's hands trembled, her sapphire bracelet clinking as she clutched the armrest, her phone, laden with the video of Ursula's disgrace, now a ticking bomb. That video, she stammered, I'll delete it, I swear. Charlotte Hale's crimson dress seemed to wilt as she leaned forward, her voice desperate. My foundation can fund your hospital, Dr. Burns. Name your price. Ursula's gaze was steel, unyielding. I don't need your money, she said, her voice a quiet storm. I need your accountability. Vanessa Quinn sat silent, her face drained of color, her boutique's fate sealed by the deeds before her. Beatrice Lang's emerald earrings caught the light as she bowed her head, her earlier confession, I knew your mother's name, hanging like a ghost between them. Her voice broke as she whispered, I was wrong. I let them pull me in. The admission was a crack in their facade, but Ursula's expression remained cold, unmoved by their pleas. Mia Torres stepped from the shadows, her camera lowered, her eyes alight with purpose. "Dr. Burns," she said, her voice steady, "I'm publishing this story. The city deserves to know your strength." Ursula met her gaze, nodding slightly. "Tell the truth, Mia. That's enough." The journalist's presence was a spark in the room's tinder, amplifying the stakes. The Ivory Circle's cruelty, once a private game, was now poised to become a public scandal, their names teetering on the edge of infamy. Brian's voice rumbled, a low growl. "Ursula could evict you all with a single signature. Consider this mercy." The words were a guillotine, and the women's faces, once masks of superiority, were now etched with fear, their power exposed as fragile. Ursula's voice rose, commanding the room like a conductor. "The Ivory Circle is dissolved," she declared, her words a gavel striking marble. "This ballroom will host the Horizon Alliance, a group dedicated to respect, inclusion, and service, not elitism." Her gaze swept over the women, each pair of eyes reflecting a mix of desperation and dread. "You'll join it, or you'll leave this building. Your first act will be a public apology to Jamal, the guard you forced to escort me out, at the next city gala. Then you'll apologize to every person you've ever looked down on." The terms were ironclad, leaving no room for negotiation, her authority as absolute as the storm outside. She outlined their roles. Evelyn would lead health drives in Harlem. Lillian would amplify community voices through her media empire. Charlotte would fund scholarships for underprivileged youth. Vanessa would transform her boutique into a free clinic hub, and Beatrice would host art programs for at-risk teens. "This isn't redemption," Ursula said, her voice cutting through their stunned silence. "It's responsibility. You mocked my heritage, my work, my skin. Your apologies mean nothing unless they're backed by action." Evelyn's face paled to a ghostly shade, her hands trembling. "We were wrong," she whispered, her eyes glistening with what might have been tears. "How can we make this right?" Ursula's response was unyielding. "You start by facing the city you tried to break." Lillian's voice cracked, her panic rising. "My contracts, if that video leaks..." Ursula's gaze hardened. "You should have thought of that before you filmed my shame." Charlotte's plea was softer, almost broken. "My family's name," Vanessa whispered. "My boutique is my life." Beatrice nodded, her guilt a heavy shroud. "I'll do it," she said, her voice barely audible. "I owe you that." The women's agreement was a chorus of whispered assent, their faces a gallery of defeat. Mia's camera clicked one final time, sealing their fate in the lens of truth. Ursula stood taller, her wet dress a testament to her resilience, her braids glistening like obsidian. She thought of her parents' bakery, her mother's patents, the fire in her Nigerian blood. These women had tried to dim that fire, but it burned brighter now, a beacon of justice. Brian squeezed her hand, his pride evident in the curve of his lips, his white billionaire status a silent rebuke to their prejudice. The room's silence was suffocating. The weight of their reckoning was a tangible force, a moment when the seeds of change took root in their shame. The ballroom's oppressive silence lingered in Ursula Burns' mind as she and Brian L. Roberts stepped into the night, the storm's roar now a fading echo. Her emerald dress, still damp and wine-stained, clung to her like a badge of triumph, the weight of her victory over the Ivory Circle grounding her steps. Brian's arm, a steady anchor, guided her through the skyscraper's lobby, his tailored suit a quiet testament to their shared resolve. The city's pulse thrummed beyond the glass doors, its lights a mosaic of defiance, as if New York itself bore witness to the seismic shift Ursula had unleashed. The Horizon Alliance, born from the ashes of the Ivory Circle's arrogance, was no mere mandate. It was a revolution, and the city gala, weeks away, would be its crucible. The gala arrived under a velvet sky. Manhattan's elite gathered in a grand hall draped in gold and crystal, its opulence a stark contrast to the raw stakes unfolding. Ursula stood at the edge of the crowd, her navy gown a deliberate departure from the wine-stained emerald, its elegance understated but commanding. Brian beside her in a crisp tuxedo, his white billionaire presence a silent rebuke to the whispers rippling through the room, squeezed her hand. "You've changed the game," he murmured, his voice warm with pride. Ursula's gaze swept the hall, landing on the five women who had once mocked her. Evelyn Prescott, Lillian Drake, Charlotte Hale, Vanessa Quinn, and Beatrice Lang, now clustered near the stage, their couture gowns dulled by the weight of their impending atonement. Evelyn's silver hair, once a regal crown, was pulled back simply, her diamond necklace replaced by a modest chain, her eyes darting with unease. Lillian clutched a champagne flute, her sapphire bracelet absent, her media empire teetering after a major contract vanished, whispers of her video scandal circling. Charlotte's crimson lips were tight, her foundation's reputation fraying under scrutiny. Vanessa's posture sagged, her boutique now a shadow of its former glory, its lease hanging by Ursula's mercy. Beatrice, her emerald earrings gone, stood slightly apart, her face etched with a guilt that seemed a war with defiance. Mia Torres moved through the crowd, her camera a quiet threat, her article, "The Surgeon Who Shattered the Elite," already a firestorm in New York's social columns. The gala's host called for silence, and the crowd turned as Evelyn stepped to the microphone, her voice trembling but clear. "Tonight, we address a grave wrong," she began, her eyes flickering to Ursula. "We humiliated Dr. Ursula Burns, mocking her heritage, her work, and her dignity. We were wrong." Lillian followed, her voice cracking. "I filmed her shame, thinking it a game. I'm sorry." Charlotte's apology was clipped, her aristocratic poise strained. "We judged her without knowing her strength." Vanessa's words were soft, almost inaudible. "I failed to see her worth." Beatrice last met Ursula's gaze, her voice raw. "I knew her mother's legacy and stayed silent. I owe you more than words." The crowd murmured, a mix of shock and approval, as Jamal, the guard, stepped forward, his uniform crisp, his eyes steady. The women, one by one, apologized to him, their voices a chorus of humbled pride. Ursula watched from the shadows, her heart a tangle of justice and restraint. The apologies, though public, were but a first step. Words meant nothing without action. Brian leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. "They're learning," he said, "but you set the terms." She nodded, her navy gown catching the light like a quiet vow. The Horizon Alliance had taken root. Evelyn's health drives in Harlem were underway. Lillian's media outlets amplifying local voices. Charlotte's scholarships funding dreams. Vanessa's boutique reborn as a clinic hub. And Beatrice's art program sparking hope in at-risk teens. Yet their transformation was fragile, each woman wrestling with the cost of their former arrogance. Mia approached, her camera slung over her shoulder, her eyes alight with respect. "Your story's reshaping this city, Dr. Burns," she said. "I'm following the Alliance's progress. People need to see what you've started." Ursula's smile was measured. "Focus on the work, not me," she replied, her voice firm but kind. Mia nodded, slipping back into the crowd, her article's impact already rippling. Evelyn's social invitations had dwindled. Lillian's contracts hung by a thread, and Vanessa's boutique faced closure if she faltered. The city's elite, once complicit in silence, now watched the ivory circles fall with wary eyes, their privilege under scrutiny. Back at the hospital, Ursula moved through her rounds, her scalpel steady, her mind sharp despite the gala's weight. A patient, a young boy saved from a tumor, gripped her hand, his mother's gratitude a quiet balm. Her navy gown hung in her locker, a symbol of her unyielding strength. The ivory circle's apologies echoed in her thoughts, but she knew true change lay in their actions, not their words. Brian's text lit her phone. "Proud of you. They'll never forget tonight." She smiled, his support a steady flame. Their interracial bond a defiance of the prejudice that had tried to break her. The Horizon Alliance's early steps were fraught but promising. Evelyn's health drew crowds, her once icy demeanor softened by a child's thank you. Lillian's editorials, though reluctant, gave voice to Harlem's stories. Beatrice, still haunted by her silence, poured herself into her art programs, her redemption a work in progress. Yet the city's pulse beat stronger, its skyline a canvas of possibility, and Ursula felt her mother's fire, Ngozi Burns' legacy, burning within her. The gala had been a reckoning, but the true test lay ahead. Could these women rebuild what they'd shattered, or would their shame consume them? Ursula's resolve was iron, her gaze fixed on a future she'd forged from their cruelty. The city's pulse thrummed through the Harlem streets, its rhythm a quiet anthem of resilience, as spring's warmth softened the edges of a once unforgiving winter. Ursula Burns moved through the corridors of New York Presbyterian Hospital, her white coat a mantle of purpose, her scalpel steady as she mended lives broken by fate. The navy gown from the city gala, where the Ivory Circle had publicly apologized, hung in her locker, a silent relic of her triumph over their cruelty. Months had passed since that night, when Evelyn Prescott and her clique, Lillian Drake, Charlotte Hale, Vanessa Quinn, and Beatrice Lang, had faced the weight of their shame before Manhattan's elite. The Horizon Alliance, born from Ursula's unyielding terms, was no longer a mandate, but a movement, its roots spreading through the city like veins of hope. Evelyn, once the untouchable queen of high society, now stood in a Harlem clinic, her silver hair tied back simply, handing out medical supplies to families with a focus that belied her former arrogance. Her health drives, mandated by Ursula, had become a lifeline, though her eyes still carried a flicker of reluctance, a woman wrestling with the cost of her transformation. Lillian's media empire, battered by the loss of a major contract after whispers of her video scandal, now amplified community voices, her editorials a reluctant tribute to Ursula's vision. Charlotte's scholarships funded dreams for Harlem's youth, her aristocratic poise softened by their gratitude. Vanessa's boutique, once a shrine to luxury, was now a bustling clinic hub, its doors open to those she'd once scorned. Beatrice, haunted by her silence that night, poured herself into art programs for at-risk teens, her redemption a fragile work in progress. Mia Torres's article, "The Surgeon Who Shattered the Elite," had set New York ablaze, its words painting Ursula as a quiet titan who toppled a gilded empire. The piece, reprinted in every major outlet, had stripped the Ivory Circle's veneer, leaving Evelyn shunned from elite circles, her invitations replaced by whispers of her fall. Lillian's contracts dwindled further, her name tied to the video that never surfaced, thanks to Ursula's mercy. Yet Ursula shunned the spotlight, refusing interviews, her focus fixed on her patients. A mother saved from a stroke, a child's tumor defeated. Her wealth, inherited from her mother, Dr. Ngozi Burns, through her medical patents, flowed quietly into community projects, a silent force reshaping the city she loved. One evening, as Ursula locked the hospital's doors, the skyline glowed against the dusk, its lights a canvas of possibility. She paused, her thoughts drifting to her parents' Harlem bakery, where flour-dusted hands had kneaded her future. A memory surfaced, her mother braiding her hair in their cramped kitchen, whispering, "You carry fire in your blood, Ursula. No one can take that." That fire had carried her through the storm, the wine-stained dress, the Ivory Circle's laughter. It burned now, a steady flame fueled by her Nigerian roots and her mother's legacy. Brian L. Roberts' text lit her phone. "You're changing the world, love." She smiled, their interracial bond a quiet defiance of the prejudice that had tried to break her. Evelyn appeared at the hospital's entrance, her silver hair unadorned, her face etched with a vulnerability Ursula hadn't seen. "Dr. Burns," she said, her voice soft, almost fragile, "I've been meaning to talk to you." The woman who'd poured wine on Ursula's dress, who'd orchestrated her humiliation, stood humbled, her eyes free of their former sharpness. "What we did was unforgivable," she continued. "I'm trying to change, to earn your respect." Ursula paused, her hand resting on a patient chart, her gaze steady but distant. "Respect isn't given, Evelyn," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You mocked my heritage, my work, my skin. Earn it by rebuilding what you broke." Evelyn's face fell, but she nodded, accepting the rebuke, and turned away, her steps echoing in the hospital's hush. The Horizon Alliance thrived, its impact rippling through New York. Evelyn's clinic saved lives, though her pride still chafed at the labor. Lillian's editorials, once reluctant, found purpose in stories of resilience. Beatrice's art classes, filled with teens painting their futures, were a testament to her atonement, though her guilt lingered. The city whispered Ursula's name, not as a celebrity, but as a force, a black woman from Harlem who'd rewritten the rules of power. Her parents' bakery stood prouder now, its warmth a beacon for the community, and Ursula felt their grit in her veins, her mother's brilliance in her hands. As she walked home, the skyline's glow bathed her in light, a reminder of the world she'd reshaped. The ivory circle's cruelty had been a crucible, forging something beautiful, not for her glory, but for those overlooked, like Jamal, whose dignity she'd restored. Brian greeted her at their apartment, his embrace a quiet anchor. "You did it," he murmured, his pride evident. Ursula's smile was soft, her fire undimmed. Her Nigerian heritage, her mother's parents, her scalpel's precision, they were her legacy, a truth no storm could wash away. The Horizon Alliance was her monument, etched in the city's heart, a lesson that a woman underestimated could change everything. What a journey through the storm of truth. Ursula Burns' unyielding fire turned the Ivory Circle's cruelty into a beacon of justice, reshaping a city's heart. Did her triumph over prejudice ignite your spark of defiance? How did Evelyn's humbled plea or Beatrice's confession resonate with you? Share your thoughts below. Where and when are you listening? And what stirred your soul in this tale? Your voices fuel our stories, and we're grateful for every moment you've spent with us. Ursula's legacy reminds us, no storm can dim a woman's strength when she carries truth. Hit that subscribe button, keep notifications on, and join us for the next tale of empowerment and reckoning. Who learned the hardest lesson, and what stories of justice do you crave next? Thank you for being here. We can't wait to meet you again in the next chapter.